Chapter 23 1927 hours, April 16, 2539 military calendar, Trome system, planet boundary, high equatorial orbit, Covenant battlecruiser Purity of Spirit. Sheila was backpedaling in a controlled gait, careful to maintain dispersion from her teammates while covering their rear. The override she spoofed to the doorway. Behind them would only last so long before the Covenant engineers could arrive to rectify the issue. The procession of ODSTs and Spartans began making their way through the next corridor and beyond to what looked to her like a crypt. There were no visible light sources or active computer terminals, just derelict hulks and random equipment scattered throughout the area. Another maintenance bay or a damaged area of the ship under repair, perhaps. She continued to backpedal slowly, scanning to either side of the hallway to cover multiple entry points. Without warning, the large metallic doors slammed shut behind her. No chance to enter or stay with her group. "Teal leader," she shouted and banged a fist on the hatch. Nothing. She began to assess the terminal attached to the alcove between the bulkhead and the double doors to see if she could try the same trick twice. Nothing. It was locked down completely. This was bad. She tried raising anyone on squad comm to no avail. Only a hiss of static returned her attempts at communication. Whoever set this up was thorough. She was cut off, both eyes and ears. At last, she pressed the side of her helmet to the door in an attempt to gain any intel. A flurry of sounds echoed through the metal and was amplified by her helmet sensors. She could hear shouting, automatic gunfire, the telltale whining of plasma rifles. There was nothing she could do to help the situation now and turned back toward the direction they came. Pulling up the rudimentary schematics of the ship on her HUD, she identified a likely bundle of coolant pipes and began to traverse its interior and onward toward the engineering deck. Arthur and Cal could take care of themselves. It was up to her now to reach the objective and stash the ordnance before it was too late. The longer they were on this ship, the less likely they were to survive. After several harrowing minutes of belly crawls and awkward movements, she arrived at the destination. Careful to not alert any patrols along the way, she had stuck to the shadows, dodging several hunter-killer teams roaming the halls in an effort to confirm their successful execution of their human raiders. Package secured. Almost to the objective. Sit tight, guys, she said to no one in particular. She rounded a final corner, and the dazzling light of two immense towers nearly blinded her. The onboard computer automatically tinted her visor to 40%. Two towers of light converged at the nexus of the structure, at least 20 meters in height and width. She surveyed the massive chamber to find a likely spot to stash the Fury. The Spartan carefully detached the Fury thermonuclear device for the last time and situated it in a seam of superconductive coils and cooling tanks. She picked this particular spot because the radiant light of the reactors cast an ebony shadow over the entire area, and the background radiation produced by the alien engine would disguise the bomb well. Her earpiece crackled to life again now, a single transmission breaking through the ship-wide jammer. Ambushed. Spaced. Find. The comm went dead. Ambushed. Spaced. What the hell had happened to her team? The logical conclusion was easy with the first word. If she was fighting a raiding party on her own turf, she would have separated their forces as well. But what did spaced and find mean? Was it possible that the Covenant were under attack by Captain Fulton's task force and a section of hull was destroyed? Or did things not go according to plan for the elites and they broke off a piece of their own ship to space the team? She was running out of time and had to think about her next move. Sheila verified once more that there were no immediate threats in the area, both visually and electronically, then began the tedious task of removing pieces of her armor. Shrapnel, presumably from the ship's hull, had embedded itself into a servo on her right hip joint, causing both damage to her body and reducing the mobility of the leg. She extracted the mangled metal, inserted the auto-injector of biofoam into the emergency induction port located near the hip, and squeezed. A rush of icy heat filled her pelvis as the polypseudomorphine ran its course as a million fire ants danced on her jagged wound, while the biofoam expanded and created a hard protective cover over the exposed area. She grabbed a handful of emergency patches and covered the larger holes in her suit. She started with her rib cage and worked her way down to her hip. She flexed her joints once more to confirm its effectiveness. Pleased with the results, she replaced the missing armor pieces and armed the device. She set the timer to 15 minutes and closed the control board. Without the rest of her team and the ship's crew undoubtedly still on high alert, she chose a route that maximized stealth and efficiency to identify the best available hangar. With no one to watch her back and injuries slowing her down, she couldn't afford to get into a prolonged firefight. Even worse, Her team was potentially drifting through space. Zero-G environments were notoriously dangerous even in the most prepared situations. Now it would be a miracle to not only locate a functioning space-worthy vessel, but escape undetected and save the remains of Teal Force. A handful of minutes breezed past while she navigated the pitch-black corridors beyond. On 3 separate occasions, the petty officer had to withdraw from her route in order to avoid detection. Once, she had to take care of a hapless grunt wandering a hallway unattended. She was almost to the nearest hangar. Sheila stepped through the final doorway, shotgun raised, and prepared to rush whatever was on the other side. The Spartan didn't have any more time to waste. Fortune favored the bold, she thought to herself, and charged in. She stepped in, and the motion radar integrated to her HUD lit up like fireflies in the night. Immediately taking cover, the Spartan dared a peek around a partially disassembled Seraph fighter. Its wings were peppered with human autocannon fire. The prow of the vessel partially caved in. There was no way she'd be able to sneak this thing off without alerting the support crew milling beyond. From her glance beyond the precious cover ahead, she saw a Banshee attack craft in good shape. No dice. Even if she could maneuver the craft to get her teammates on the wings, there's no way they'd survive re-entry. She had to find something else. Moving to a low crouching position, she tensed her legs for a sprint. Sheila peeked from her position once more to quickly observe a light patrol of jackals, forearm shields raised in a defensive posture, as if expecting trouble to leap out at any moment. After watching the patrol for what felt like hours, she deduced a 4-second window where their backs were turned. Her onboard computer delineated the patrol path on her visor and displayed a countdown. It was unsettling to be hard-lined into the Mjolnir armor sometimes. As fast as she thought something, the suit responded. The timer read 12 seconds, then 5, then 2. She braced into her crouched position. According to the computer, she had to cover a distance of roughly 62 meters across the open hangar without being detected. If she was caught in the open, she would have little more than scrap metal and Covenant vehicles to take refuge nearby. The alarm would sound, and every combat team left in the damn ship would crash upon her like a tidal wave. Her HUD displayed 00:01. She squeezed the shotgun tighter. The display flashed 0000, and time seemed to slow down around her. Once in training back on Reach all those years ago, she had heard Kelly 087 refer to it as Spartan time. The Spartans' biochemical and structural augmentations made it possible for them to perceive their surroundings at a fraction of time well below a normal human. Their skeletal structure was reinforced through a process known as ceramic carbide ossification. Without this procedure, the enhanced density muscle fibers would break their bones from stress. Superconducting fibrification of their neural dendrites altered their base reaction time, increased by a factor of 300%. In times of extreme stress and coupled by adrenaline, the effects of the chemical cocktail manifests dramatically, further reducing the reaction time of Spartans. Thus, time appeared to move slower. With all the might she could muster, Sheila exploded from her covered position. She breezed past a busy group of grunts preoccupied moving what looked like a dolly of fuel for a nearby Seraph fighter. A new countdown had appeared on her HUD now, showing the window of time before the jackals on an overwatch position noticed her. She tilted her head to the left and above to identify a pair of jackals cradling carbines. Thankfully, their backs were still turned to the hangar below as they began to round a pillar and conduct the rest of the patrol route. The timer read 003. And she spotted a Type 44 Phantom troop carrier beyond a large partition that split the hangar in two. She rounded the corner of the wall beyond and came across some light resistance. The Spartan raised her shotgun over her head and stroked the butt of her weapon onto the crown of an elite's helmet. The alien let out a faint sigh as its heap fell to the deck. Without breaking stride, she proceeded directly to the Phantom and threw stealth to the wayside. She noticed another elite poke his head up and over the control arm of a hauler with eyes widened. Immediately, he began barking orders at the file of grunts below the hauler. She opened fire, and buckshot and plasma bolts filled the hangar. She rolled, sprang to her feet, and sent another flurry of pellets toward the aggressors. She crumpled the chest of one grunt and worked her way left to right, pirouetting around a hail of plasma to score 4 more hits. As the ammunition counter clicked 0 on her weapon indicator, she threw the weapon toward the elite officer, striking it in the chest and stunning it for just long enough for her next move. The elite bellowed something unintelligible and opened fire once more. An electric blue arc screamed toward Sheila and struck her chest plate. The familiar sounds of alarms blared. The screen flashed red, and she leaped into the air. The nimble Spartan closed the distance with the elite and grappled it to the ground, combat knife now drawn. Even with the enhancements of her suit, elites were tough. On more than one occasion, Sheila had witnessed Spartans in desperate hand-to-hand fighting, unable to gain the upper hand against the sheer strength of the impressive warrior race. They averaged well over 2.5 meters in height and typically carried energy blades that cut through titanium like butter. Thankfully, the elite did not have such a weapon. They began to roll, the elite gaining an advantage over her exhausted state. Her chest was on fire from the plasma shot. In desperation, she quickly relaxed her stance and allowed the elite to take the upper hand in a feint. As his mass fell onto her suit, she used the opportunity to headbutt the alien in its 4 jaws. The elite reeled back, its face painted with a mix of stun and rage. She wrestled her fist free, spun on a heel, and drove the knife deep into the alien's neck. The pair collapsed to the ground in a tangled mess of blood and limbs. A soft gurgle of purple blood oozed out of the gaps in its jaw as the elite slowly stopped moving. No sooner had Sheila vanquished the officer than the pair of jackal marksmen started targeting her location. A streak of green radioactive particles shrieked over her shoulder and impacted. She leaped away, tucked her legs, and rolled behind a plasma turret. She gripped the base, spun, and began to let loose a fury of plasma bolts. The Spartan dispatched the pair of jackals and turned to board the Phantom. She climbed a ramp farther beyond the gunner's station and entered. Encountering no resistance, she began testing controls to close the hatch behind her. She laid a hand on a rectangular device and initiated the impulse drive. Cross-trained in nearly every Covenant vehicle, Sheila had a respectable amount of flight hours logged in captured Phantom and Spirit Troop transport craft. Dealing with the hangar doors, however, might prove to be a problem. Sheila turned the Phantom 180 degrees and engaged the dorsal plasma cannons. Angry red blobs of plasma danced upon the energy fields that separated the hangar from the vacuum of space. She cursed under her breath. The turrets weren't doing enough damage to break the barrier. She surveyed the area around the door, looking for structural weaknesses or vulnerabilities. She noticed a likely-looking generator with power lines running from the deck up through the side of the hangar bay. She adjusted fire and took aim at the power junction. Sparks flew, and flames began to lick at the ceiling of the hangar in a fiery display. An explosion erupted moments later, the energy field flickering, then dying out. She released the weapons controls and raised the power stripe near her right hand. The troop carrier darted out of the hangar and into the upper atmosphere of Boundary. With no time to waste, she opened up TeamCom and hailed Teal Leader. Teal 1, this is Teal 3. Activate IFF tags and make adjustments for a hot pickup. She broadcasted in the open. The time for stealth was over. Her best bet was to pick Teal Force up as quickly as possible before the crew of Easy Catch realized what just happened. Acknowledged Teal 3. It was Arthur over the comms. Adjust heading 074 degrees, marking waypoint now. We're the big section of hull, can't miss it. Sheila increased velocity and sped toward her objective several hundred kilometers away. Using a free moment en route to her teammates, she pulled up the timer for the Fury. The readout displayed 62 seconds and dropped when the alien behemoth began to open fire with its point defense lasers. Sheila narrowly dodged a lance of light with an evasive roll. She couldn't determine if she was out of maximum range yet, but because the Phantom was a small target, she would be much harder to hit. Redlining the impulse drive of the craft, Sheila barreled toward Arthur and Cal. She continued to dodge plasma fire, desperately hoping to run the clock out. She rolled left, then right, finishing with an ugly barrel roll to a dive. For several heartbeats, Sheila played this cat-and-mouse game until at once, the ship stopped firing. Had she outrun the battlecruiser? Had the nuke gone off? She checked the instrument panel for any radiation spikes, and found none. She checked the countdown timer on her HUD, and it read 0000. She didn't know why the Covenant stopped pursuit, but she was thankful. She'd have to think about it some other time. Arthur's IFF tag came into view first, then Cal's. Several kilometers and closing, Sheila spun the craft around and activated the thrusters once more to counteract her momentum. The ship shuddered under the extreme maneuver. Metal popped and clanging from the stress. She lowered the ramp and waited for the pair of Spartans to maneuver inside. From her aft camera display, she observed 2 tiny dots propelled from a massive curved section of alien hull plating. They must have taken refuge there in hopes that Sheila could locate them easier. Smart. Moments later, 2 faint thuds reverberated through the hull, the magnetic soles of their sabotons latching down. Sheila sealed the ramp once more and took off full bore in a re-entry vector for the planet's surface. While Arthur and Cal were getting situated in the troop bay, Sheila was busy with the next phase of her hastily concocted plan. Because they had hijacked an enemy vessel, they might not last long against human anti-aircraft fire. That is, if there were any left. She had no idea how the battle was going on the ground. But with a large portion of Boundary's defense forces tied up with the land battle in the Iran mountain range, the city was sure to fall eventually. Because of this fact, she was now hard at work trying to raise any friendly unit on the radio. After cycling through several frequencies, a familiar voice broke through. It was Harvest Moon, Boundary's agricultural maintenance AI. He was broadcasting on both encrypted and unencrypted frequencies. Not a good sign. She hailed the entity and waited. This is HVM 1192-77 Artificial Intelligence Harvest Moon. Confirm identity unknown craft. This is Sierra 065 requesting permission to land. We're in a captured Covenant Phantom and are en route to Salvation Capitol building, she said tersely. If this didn't work, they'd be dodging both Covenant and human gunfire. She could fool a few banshees, but not for long. Voice verification analyzing. Voice verification complete. Harvest Moon's modulated voice took on a very robotic tinge. That was a bad sign. He must be completely overwhelmed trying to coordinate evacuation efforts, provide tactical assistance to forces on the ground, and mitigate civilian activities within the city. He began again. Sierra 065. Urgent message from Captain Fulton, Teal Force. If you're still out there, abort mission and rendezvous at these coordinates. It was Captain Alistair Fulton on the channel. A string of coordinates appeared on her visor. Things aren't looking good up here, Spartans. We are fully engaged with the Covenant. We'll try to buy the merchant marine fleet as much time as we can. At that waypoint, you'll find Death's Hand ready and waiting. They're being recalled to Task Force X-Ray for debriefing. You'll be happy to hear Sierra 079 and a handful of ODSTs made it back. Good luck out there, Spartans. Fulton out. The hatch to the cockpit slid open to reveal a battered display of a man. There were dents and scratches covering his armor from the debris jettisoned from the ship. His visor plate was crumpled on one side and caused it to curl inward. Most alarming was the gash on his chest. Cut diagonally from collar to sternum, flakes of dark gray biofoam fell like snow as he moved. He ducked under the bulkhead and took a seat next to Sheila. Catch all that? She asked. Affirmative. Sheila could hear the strain in his voice. Let's take her in. Nice and steady, Teal 3. Bad news comes in threes, she thought. First, the failed mission on the cruiser. And now the fleet was in peril. She hoped to God that when the other shoe dropped, they would be prepared. Sheila flashed 2 horizontal fingers over her faceplate, hiding the elation of finding Arthur and Cal in one piece, and set course to the rendezvous point.